Assalamualaikum warahmatullah. Welcome back to our program. Earlier, we were examining the Islamic loan as a product for banking, which is not suitable because if we provide our capital as a loan under the banner of Islamic loan, there is no possibility that we will be getting any profit from the business because an Islamic loan cannot command any kind of an increase. And therefore, we can see that in the Islamic banking contract, for example, for Bank Islam 2021, we can see that we have the contract of Bay Bersamaan Ajil, Murabaha, Ba'adain, Al-Ina, Tawaruk, Ijarathuma Al-Bay, Istisna, Rahnu. So there is no Qardu Hasan contract offered by the Islamic bank because these Qardu Hasan contract are not meant to be applied for business purposes, and therefore it is only suitable for personal loan between individuals, and therefore um, we should be looking at it more closely. What will be the nature of this Islamic loan when we are using it not for business purposes. So, okay, we have here in our diagram the conventional loan or interest-bearing loan. For example, for a 10,000 facility, the bank will charge 10% of interest rate per annum for 5 years, and therefore the interest charges would be 10,000 multiplied by 10% times 5 years. So that will be 5,000 of interest charge. And therefore, the borrower will owe the bank a sum of the loan, which is 10,000, plus the interest payment, which is 5,000, and therefore the total debt that the borrower owe the bank over the 5 years would be 15,000. And we can see that the size of the debt, which is 15,000, is more than the size of the loan, that is 10,000. So that is the nature of the interest-bearing loan, that the amount that we borrow will lead to the charges of interest of 5,000, and therefore we owe the bank over the 5-year payment period of 15,000. But when we look at an Islamic loan, when the loan facility is at 10,000, the bank is not, or the borrower is not, the lending party is not allowed to charge anything above the loan facility, and therefore, there's no profit rate or any interest rate. So if you want to call it profit rate, there is no profit rate over the principal loan, and tenure for 5 years, so no profit will be collected from this facility, and the total amount of debt owed by the borrowing party will be 10,000, and this will be equivalent to the amount of loan taken. So if this is a kind of Islamic loan available for application, so it is not actually an attractive product for business to use, and therefore in order to have this $10,000 to be imputed into business, then it should be converted into a mudarabah capital or qirat capital or musyarakah capital, so that the capital provider would have the chance to make money from the investment if there is any profit derived from the business. So we can see that when we compare the increment from loan and increment from an interest-bearing loan and an increment from Islamic loan, we can see that in the Islamic loan there is no increment at all. So that is why I was saying that we should see the Islamic loan to be used on personal ground rather than on business ground. But if you look at the tradition at the bottom over here, that overall the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ suggests that the best among us is he or she who pay a handsome debt. So meaning that when we settle our debt, meaning that we take a personal loan, or we take a loan, or we take a qardu hasan from our friend, and when we pay back the debt over the period of the loan period, at maturity, it is encouraged for us to pay more than what we owe the person. And if we can look closely here in the hadith, that the Prophet ﷺ borrowed a younger camel, and when he is to pay back the camel, he is able to find a bigger camel, and he wanted to pay back the debt in the form of a bigger camel, and therefore the Sahaba say, why should you pay a bigger camel when you initially borrow a smaller camel? And the Prophet says that the best among you is he who pay a handsome debt. So there is an indication that it is encouraged for the debtor to pay more, and therefore it is a sunnah for us to settle our debts by paying more than the loan amount that we got from the lending party. So if, for example, your friend lend you a sum of $1,000, for a year, and then when we pay him back at the end of the year, it is encouraged to pay more than 1,000. But the amount will not be determined by the contract. So when we enter into an Islamic loan contract, we have to specify that this is the amount that we owe the lender, which is 1,000. How long are we going to pay it back? For 1 year, for example. And that's the only a term that we will agree on, the Islamic loan. And there is no mentioning of extra payment. And therefore, but then Rasulullah SAW encouraged us to pay more. And therefore, if we pay more, and if we follow the Sunnah, then we will see that there is some increment taking place on the Islamic loan. But number one, that increment is set by the debtor. It's set by the one who borrowed the money. Whereas in the conventional loan, that increment is set by the creditor or the lending party or the bank. So these are two opposite situations. And then the increment in Islamic loan is voluntary. It is not stated in the loan contract that you must pay 10%. It is voluntary. Whereas in the interest-bearing loan, it is contractual. It is stated in the agreement that the interest rate is 10%, and therefore you pay up 5,000 extra over the lending period. And the amount of the increment in Islamic loan is only known at maturity. That when you are getting the payment from your friend, you do not know basically what is he giving you back. For certain, it must be the full loan, but because of the Sunnah, your friend may give you maybe $2,000 or $500 more. So that will only be disclosed at maturity. Whereas for the conventional loan, the amount will be disclosed upfront, which is $5,000. And therefore, in the contract of Islamic loan, we will be certain to know that the amount of debt, what you owe your lending friend, is what the loan is. So the debt will be always equal to a loan, and then the increment will not be dictated or disclosed in the contract of Qardu Hasan. However, in the interest-bearing loan, we see that the debt is clearly spelled out to be 15,000. And the loan is 10,000, and therefore the nature, the increment nature of the Islamic loan is much different from the increment character of interest-bearing loan, and therefore even though the Islamic loan may command some increment due to the Sunnah, but the nature of the increment is very different from the nature of increment in the interest-bearing loan, whereby the Islamic loan provide a lesson to us to be benevolent. When we are benevolent to the borrowing party, then there is some form of return that will appear from the loan in terms of the increment that is much encouraged by our Prophet ﷺ. So later on we can discuss further regarding the so-called justification. What are the justification for the increment in Islamic loan that we can look into by based on the concept of time value of money. Okay, guys, we will stop here. Then I'll see you again in the next program. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum.